By now, you're aware that a Manhattan jury found former President Donald Trump liable for sexual assault and defamation yesterday, but not liable for an accusation of rape. This, of course, from the E Jean Carroll allegations. Joining us now to discuss this, Jordan Sekulow. He's the executive director of the American Center for Law and Justice and also co-host of the Sekulow and Sekulow Brothers podcast on the Salem Podcast Network, part of our Salem media family. A happy member of the family, too. Jordan, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I wish you could sort some of this stuff. I feel like you need to have an advanced degree in the law to comb through the illogic of all of this. E Jean Carroll, thank you. E Jean Carroll is the plaintiff in this case. Mr. Sekulow, if a jury found that Mr. Trump was not liable for the rape accusation that came from Ms. Carroll, but is liable for the sexual assault allegation that came from Ms. Carroll, how is that possible? Isn't the jury saying that she is lying about one of the accusations? And if she is lying about one of the accusations, how do you take her word on the other one?
Well, that's the difficult part. I mean, if she had come in and said I was sexually assaulted and left it there, and that's what they had found, that would be one thing. But when you have these juries saying, well, I believe her 50%, that's why it's very difficult for Donald Trump to get a fair trial anywhere, but especially in New York, even in these civil trials with juries and kind of people popping up out of history to bring it forward allegations that they didn't bring forward for years.
Yeah.
And again, this is the civil side of it, which was really brought up through the defamation issue that she's challenging. And I think what you're going to see is, again, of course, this will be appealed, and there might be a cross challenge by President Trump actually accusing her of defamation because of even talking about this, then bringing the suit, and ultimately, if he is able to win on appeal, because of matters like you just explained, where having won, you believe her halfway, but not totally.
Right.
So why would you give her the inference? And again, to me, it's just the pile-on. President Trump's used to it.
Right.
I think that people who support him are used to it. What Democrats are hoping is that it's not us, it's not the base, it's the kind of that small group of Americans that are left somewhere in the middle that they think this will impact in a general election.
Yeah, they're trying to pile on and make it sort of the Trump fatigue factor. It's like, oh, I like the guy, he was a good president, but God, I'm just done with all of this. Let's just move on. Although, listen, President Trump has said that this is a witch hunt against him and that all of this is made up. And when you have something that looks on its surface kind of rigged, that actually helps the president, I would think. I wouldn't be surprised to see his numbers go up here.
Yeah, and actually, every time he's faced these kind of legal challenges, his numbers have gone up. I mean, especially with the DA in Manhattan, I mean, in a sense, that breathed this whole new life, and because it confirmed the narrative that we've all believed because we worked on it, whether it was the Mueller investigation or the two impeachments, that this was, in fact, this pile-on witch hunt. You can use whatever term you want, but it was not just because he happens to be a Republican.
Yeah.
It was because Donald Trump shakes up the entire system. Yeah. And so that's when you get a pile-on situation. It's one thing to just be a conservative Republican. It's another to go in there not only with those views, but to say, I'm going to drain the swamp. And draining the swamp means getting rid of bureaucrats, taking away bureaucratic power. I mean, Lord knows we've seen the stories just this week about the CIA involvement in the Hunter Biden letter. And you think this is exactly why we want to drain the swamp. But you pay a price. You do pay a price for going against the government, and Donald Trump has been paying that price.
It should be pointed out, Mr. Sekulow, as he just mentioned, was a member of President Trump's legal team as well during a host of these allegations in the past. Pick your fake accusation against Trump. Mr. Sekulow was part of it. Another thing about this verdict is very disconcerting. Based on what the jury has decided here, Mr. Sekulow, it seems like a factual statement to say that Ms. Carroll has falsely accused Mr. Trump of rape, right? She made the accusation. The jury has said, nope, we don't see any liability here for rape. So there's a false accusation. Mr. Trump defended himself. He said, I am not guilty of this. And his defense of himself against a person who has falsely accused him of rape is now considered defamation? How is somebody supposed to defend themselves against a false accusation?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the legal mindset here. It's again, I think there's a Trump standard. It's unfortunate because it's not fair in law. It's like what we saw in New York. They take a state law that's a misdemeanor, somehow combine it with a federal law that you don't really have the authority to enforce, and come up with a felony that is not that the statute of limitations hasn't passed on. It's like we say TDS and Trump derangement syndrome is kind of a joke. It's really not a joke. I mean, there are these. It seems like it's just a different set of laws apply if you're Donald Trump, or I'll go further even, if you're someone who's associated with Donald Trump, because certainly one of the things they're trying to do in the legal system, and it doesn't get as much attention, but it should, is that if you are too closely associated with him, you will also be subject. You must be doing something wrong. You must be a criminal. And so even, all of the staff and former staff that are going through all of these different investigations and having to testify for hours upon hours on end just because they happen to work for this man.
Yeah, you're right. And also, let's not forget the lawyers who had originally taken on some of his cases several years ago. Their jobs were threatened. The law firms were going to excise them as partners. It is absolutely a full court press against anyone associated with the president. Again, I want to put everybody in the mindset of the jury here, the Manhattan jury who was watching. This is a classic he said, she said situation. The problem is she can't even say what year this occurred in. Forget about the month or the date. She can't even narrow down the year. And she appeared after she first made these accusations on CNN with Anderson Cooper. I want you to watch this little clip of that because this tells you the credibility of the witness at hand here.
I don't feel like a victim.
I was not thrown on the ground and ravished. Which the word rape carries so many sexual connotations. This was not sexual. It hurt. It just
But I think most people think of rape as it is a violent assault. It is not.
I think most people think of rape as being sexy.
Let's take a short break.
Think of the fantasies.
We're just going to take a quick break. If you can stick around, we'll talk more on the other side.
You're fascinating to talk to.
I mean, honestly, I think if Anderson Cooper were on the jury, he may find for Mr. Trump in this case. I mean,
let's go to a break, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I guess what I'm asking is, a Manhattan jury just hates Donald Trump. Because obviously the credibility of the witness and the facts, they didn't play in here at all.
Yeah, the gag order that was placed on President Trump, don't talk about it. That happened, right before, and don't talk about the evidence. But he is the defendant here. And so there's a lot of ways you can challenge this moving forward. Of course, what Democrats think is that the damage has already been done. Yeah. I do agree with you to some extent that they think this is where they get Trump, and I don't think it is. I think that what we've seen time and time again is that maybe if it was a regular politician who out of the blue with allegations like this, it would be more serious. When you are constantly being accused of crazy activity, and then someone literally goes on TV and says you didn't do what they said you did, and you still get brought up. Of course, it's a civil matter, so it moves forward, and a jury still figures out a way to find out, well, you were partially in the wrong somehow. You didn't do what she accused you of because she already admitted that you didn't do that, and she didn't know what the definition of this charge was. But again, it's a hyper-partisan legal system, and unfortunately for the president, and I think that's why he's willing to do this again and go through the process again, because he's paying the price even today. It's not like he left office and this all stopped. He's still paying the price. So if you're going to pay the price, you might as well try and get a second chance at finishing the job. And finishing the job would be, of course, really reforming our federal government in a way that, if this CIA story plays out about the approval of the Hunter Biden letter, and that the CIA person doing that was actually asking people to sign it, that is, again, we kind of conspiracize about the CIA being involved in other countries' elections. If they did it right here in the United States, while serving under the Trump administration, they're bureaucrats, but in the Trump administration, it just confirms the worst of what we kind of suspect our government is capable of. They're actually doing it.
Yeah, it does. And I think that the president, in running for re-election, now has a pretty good talking point on the campaign trail to say that he's just going to take a blowtorch to what is left of these agencies, because they've obviously shown themselves to be the corrupt players that they are. Sadly, it saddens me. I want to believe in our intelligence community. I want to believe in our Justice Department and our FBI, but they haven't earned that trust, and they've got to, at least as long as we're a constitutional republic. Jordan Sekulow, great stuff, and great podcast, by the way. Sekulow and Sekulow Brothers podcast at Salem Podcast Network. Thank you, sir, for joining us. There's more to come on O'Connor Tonight. You're watching Salem News Channel.